Hey everyone. I never thought I'd be writing here, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. My name S. Derek, and I thought I had it all figured out: a stable job, a beautiful home, and most importantly, an amazing wife, Emily. We've been married for 8 years, no kids yet, but we were planning on it. At least I thought we were. Everything started to unravel a few weeks ago. It was just small things at first, little cracks in the facade of our perfect life. Emily started coming home later than usual, always with some plausible excuse: a late meeting, catching up with a friend, running errands. I wanted to believe her, but there was this gnawing feeling in my gut that something was off. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels, waiting for Emily to come back from another one of her meetings. The clock ticked past midnight and my patience was wearing thin. Finally, I heard the garage door open. Emily walked in, looking flustered and exhausted. "Long day?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. She nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, just a lot of work stuff." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I let it slide that night, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, I found myself thinking about a conversation I had with my neighbor, Mrs. Harper, a few days earlier. She'd mentioned seeing a black car parked outside our house several times when I wasn't home. At the time, I brushed it off, thinking it was probably nothing. But now, I wasn't so sure. I decided to do a little digging. I started paying closer attention to Emily's behavior, looking for any signs that might confirm my suspicions. She was more guarded with her phone, always making sure it was with her, even in the bathroom. She'd get these random texts and would smile in a way that she hadn't in months. My gut twisted every time I saw that smile. One night, curiosity got the better of me. Emily had gone to bed early, claiming she was exhausted. I waited until her breathing evened out, signaling she was asleep, and then I carefully reached for her phone on the nightstand. My heart pounded as I unlocked it, using her birthday, the one thing I knew she hadn't changed. There it was, a string of messages from a contact saved as Gym Buddy. My stomach churned as I read through the texts. They weren't explicitly incriminating, but the playful tone and the frequent late-night exchanges were enough to make me see red. The next day, I confronted Emily. I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. "Who's Gym Buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked taken aback, her face flushing. "What? Why are you going through my phone? Why are you hiding things from me?" I countered. She stammered, "It is just a friend from the gym, Derek. We talk about workouts, that is all." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to so badly. But the doubt wouldn't let go. I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt for now, but I was going to find out the truth one way or another. A few days later, my worst fears were confirmed. Emily left her laptop open while she was in the shower, and I couldn't resist. I found emails between her and this so-called gym buddy, whose real name was Mark. They were planning a weekend getaway together, and the messages were filled with an intimacy that cut me to the core. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could she do this to us, to me? When she came out of the shower, I confronted her with the emails. She tried to explain, to justify her actions, but I was beyond listening. "If you decide to have sex with anyone but me, you won't like the consequences when I find out. And I will find out," I warned her, my voice trembling with anger. "Your lover will be kicked in the groin and crushed to dust. I'm sure I'll break a few ribs and maybe his nose. So say your prayers, because my investigation has already begun." Emily looked terrified, but there was a stubborn defiance in her eyes. "It's not what you think, Derek. Please, let's talk about this." But I was done talking. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the house, needing to clear my head. As I drove aimlessly around the city, I couldn't help but wonder how everything had gone so wrong. I loved Emily more than anything, but this betrayal was too much to bear. Thanks for the support and comments on my previous post. It's been a whirlwind of emotions, and I am still trying to make sense of everything. Here's what happened next. After my initial confrontation with Emily, I spent the night at a cheap motel. Sleep was impossible. My mind kept replaying our conversation, the emails, and the look on her face when I threatened her lover. I felt sick, both from anger and from the thought that my wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone, had been lying to me for who knows how long. The next morning, I dragged myself back home, hoping against hope that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. But as soon as I walked through the door, I knew things were far from okay. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked up when I entered, a mix of fear and defiance in her gaze. "Derek, we need to talk," she said quietly. I dropped my keys on the counter and crossed my arms. "Talk then. Explain to me why you've been sneaking around with this Mark guy." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "It's not what you think. Yes, I met Mark at the gym, and yes, we got close. But it wasn't about you. I was lonely, Derek. You were always at work, and when you were home, you were so distant. I felt invisible." I scoffed, unable to believe what I was hearing. "So your solution was to cheat on me? Do you have any idea how pathetic that sounds?" She flinched but continued. "I am not excusing what I did. I know it was wrong, but it was never about falling out of love with you. It was about feeling seen, feeling alive." I shook my head, trying to process her words. "If you were feeling that way, why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me how you felt?" "I tried," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But you were always too busy or too tired, and I didn't want to be a burden." The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Had I really been so blind to her needs? But then, the anger flared up again. "No, this wasn't my fault. She could have talked to me instead of sneaking around." "So what now?" I asked, my voice cold. "Are you going to keep seeing him?" Emily shook her head vehemently. "No, it is over. I ended it last night. I want to fix this, Derek. I want us to work through this together." I let out a bitter laugh. "You think it is that easy? You think saying I am sorry will make everything better?" She reached out to touch my hand, but I pulled away. "I know it won't be easy, but I love you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. Please, Derek, give us a chance." I looked at her, my heart aching with a mix of love and betrayal. Part of me wanted to believe her, to forgive and move on. But the other part of me, the part that was still seething with anger, couldn't let go of what she'd done. "I need time," I finally said. "I need time to think about everything." She nodded, tears still flowing. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting." I spent the next few days in a fog, going through the motions at work and avoiding any conversations about my personal life. Every time I saw Emily, I felt a sharp pang of hurt and anger. I didn't know how to move past this, or if I even could. One evening, I got a call from Mark. At first, I didn't recognize the number, but when I heard his voice, my blood boiled. "Derek, it's Mark. I think we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I snarled. "You've already done enough damage. Please just hear me out," he pleaded. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't want to come between you and Emily." "Well, congratulations, you did," I snapped. "What do you want?" I wanted to apologize, and to let you know that I am staying away from Emily. You have my word." I laughed bitterly. "Your word means nothing to me. Just stay out of our lives." I hung up, my hands shaking with anger. The audacity of that guy, thinking an apology would make things better. I knew I needed to do something, but I wasn't sure what. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I wasn't ready to forgive Emily, but I also wasn't ready to throw away our marriage without giving it one last shot. I needed answers, closure, and maybe a chance to rebuild. The next morning, I told Emily we needed to see a therapist. She agreed, relief and hope flickering in her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Emily and I decided to see a therapist. We found someone local, Dr. Avery, who came highly recommended. Our first session was nerve-wracking. I didn't know what to expect, and frankly, I wasn't sure if it would help. But I knew we had to try something. We sat in Dr. Avery's cozy office, the room filled with soft lighting and calming decor. Emily and I sat on the couch, a chasm of silence between us. Dr. Avery sat in an armchair across from us, a notebook in her lap. "So Derek, Emily," she began, her voice gentle yet firm, "why don't we start by talking about why you're here?" I took a deep breath, my hands clenched into fists. "Emily cheated on me," I said bluntly. I found out she's been having an affair with a guy from the gym. Emily looked down, her eyes brimming with tears. I know I made a terrible mistake, but I want to fix this. I love Derek, and I am willing to do whatever it takes. Dr. Avery nodded, her expression thoughtful. Infidelity is one of the hardest challenges a marriage can face. It's going to take a lot of work from both of you to rebuild trust. Derek, how do you feel about trying to repair your marriage? I stared at the floor, the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to try, but the other part of me is still so angry. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. That is completely understandable, Dr. Avery said. Trust is earned, and right now it has been broken. Emily, what are you willing to do to rebuild that trust? Emily wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. I'll do anything. I'll be completely honest, no more secrets. I'll stop going to the gym where I met Mark. I'll go to individual therapy if that helps. I just want to prove to Derek that I am committed to making this right. Dr. Avery gave a small nod of approval. Those are good steps. Transparency is key right now. Derek, what do you need from Emily to even consider moving forward? I thought about it for a moment. I need her to cut all ties with Mark, obviously. And I need her to be honest with me about everything, no more lies, no more half-truths. I need to feel like I can trust her again, even if it's just a little bit at a time. Emily reached out, her hand trembling. I hesitated but then took it, feeling a flicker of hope. We continued therapy over the next few weeks, and slowly we started to peel back the layers of our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to give up, to walk away and never look back. But there were also moments when I remembered why I fell in love with Emily in the first place. One evening, after a particularly intense session, we were sitting on the couch at home. Emily turned to me, her eyes searching mine. Derek, can I ask you something? I nodded, bracing myself. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Her question hung in the air, heavy with vulnerability. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I don't know, I said honestly. I want to, but it is going to take time. And it is going to take a lot of work from both of us. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I understand, I miss us. I miss you. I felt a pang in my chest. Despite everything, I missed her too. The Emily I fell in love with, the one who made me laugh, who supported me through thick and thin. I wanted to find a way back to that, but I wasn't sure if it was possible. As the weeks turned into months, we kept at it. Dr. Avery helped us navigate the minefield of our emotions, guiding us through the pain and the anger. Slowly, we started to rebuild. Emily cut all ties with Mark and switched gyms. She was transparent about her whereabouts and made a genuine effort to regain my trust. One night, after a long day at work, I came home to find Emily in the kitchen cooking dinner. She looked up and smiled, a hint of the old spark in her eyes. Hey, how was your day? She asked. Not bad, I replied, setting my bag down. Yours? It was good. I made your favorite lasagna. I couldn't help but smile. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. We sat down to eat, and for the first time in a long time, it felt almost normal. We talked about our day, laughed about silly things, and for a moment, the weight of the past few months lifted. After dinner, we sat on the couch, and Emily rested her head on my shoulder. I hesitated, then put my arm around her, pulling her close. It felt good, comforting even. I know it's going to take time, she whispered, but thank you for giving us a chance. I kissed the top of her head, feeling a small ember of hope flicker to life. We'll get through this, I said softly, one step at a time. As Emily and I continued with therapy, things slowly started to improve. We had our good days and our bad days, but at least we were talking. Communication was something we'd lost along the way, and therapy was helping us rebuild that bridge. A month or so into our sessions, Dr. Avery suggested that we take a short trip together, just the two of us, to try and reconnect. At first, I was hesitant. The thought of spending a few days alone with Emily, away from the safety net of therapy, was daunting. But I knew we needed this. We needed to see if we could still enjoy each other's company without the cloud of betrayal hanging over us. We decided to go to a cabin in the mountains, a place we used to visit before everything went wrong. It was secluded and peaceful, the perfect place to get away from it all. The drive up was a mix of awkward silence and small talk, but as we got closer, I started to feel a bit more hopeful. When we arrived, Emily looked around and smiled. "I've missed this place," she said softly. "Me too," I replied, unloading our bags from the car. The first day was a bit tense. We went for a hike, trying to fall back into our old rhythms, but there was a palpable tension in the air. Every time I looked at Emily, I couldn't help but think about Mark and the betrayal. She seemed to sense my unease and tried her best to be patient and understanding. That evening, we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Emily poured us each a glass of wine, and we talked about everything and nothing. It felt good to just be together, without the distractions of daily life. "Do you remember the last time we were here?" she asked, a wistful smile on her lips. I nodded. "Yeah, it was right after our 5th anniversary. We had that crazy thunderstorm and ended up playing board games by candlelight." She laughed, the sound bringing a warmth to my heart. "I remember. You cheated at Monopoly." "I did not," I protested, grinning despite myself. "You were just a sore loser." We laughed together, and for the first time in a long time, it felt genuine. That night, as we lay in bed, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could get through this. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. The next day, we decided to go fishing at the nearby lake. It was something we both enjoyed, and it gave us a chance to talk without the pressure of eye contact. As we sat on the dock, our lines cast into the water, Emily turned to me, her expression serious. "Derek, I know it's going to take time, but I want you to know how sorry I am. For everything. I never meant to hurt you, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "I know, Emily, and I am trying. It's just it is hard to forget." "I don't expect you to forget," she said quietly, "but I hope one day you can forgive me." We sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the gentle lapping of the water and the distant call of birds. It was peaceful, and in that moment, I felt a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in a long time: forgiveness. The rest of the trip went surprisingly well. We laughed, we talked, and we even managed to rekindle some of the romance that had been missing. By the time we packed up to head home, I felt more optimistic than I had in months. But life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. A few days after we got back, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered it, and to my shock, it was Mark. My blood ran cold as he started talking. "Derek, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to you." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice tight with anger. "Stay away from Emily and stay out of our lives." "It's not about Emily," he said quickly. I wanted to apologize. For everything. And I wanted to let you know that I am leaving town. I got a job offer out of state, and I am taking it." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him to go to hell, but another part of me felt a strange sense of relief. "Good," I finally said. "You've caused enough damage. Just go." He sighed. "I'm really sorry, Derek. I hope you and Emily can work things out. Goodbye." I hung up, my hands shaking. I sat there for a while, processing what had just happened. When I finally told Emily about the call, she looked relieved but also worried. "I'm glad he is leaving," she said. "But I'm more concerned about you. How do you feel?" I took a deep breath, trying to sort through my emotions. "I don't know. I am relieved, I guess, but also angry. It's going to take time, Emily, but I think we're on the right path." She hugged me tightly, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a small measure of peace. We still had a long way to go, but maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. After the trip to the cabin and Mark's unexpected phone call, I felt like things were finally starting to move in the right direction. Emily and I continued our therapy sessions, both together and individually. It wasn't easy, but we were committed to making it work. A few weeks after Mark's call, Emily came home from work looking unusually excited. She handed me an envelope with a grin. "Open it." I raised an eyebrow, curious. Inside was a voucher for a weekend retreat at a nearby resort. "What's this?" I asked, looking up at her. "It is a couples retreat," she explained. One of my friends went and said it did wonders for her marriage. I thought it might be good for us too. I hesitated, memories of the cabin trip still fresh in my mind. Are you sure we are ready for this? She nodded, her eyes earnest. I think it could help us reconnect even more. And it's structured so there will be activities and sessions to guide us. I took a deep breath, considering it. Okay, let's do it. The retreat was held at a beautiful resort nestled in the mountains. The moment we arrived, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The schedule was packed with workshops, therapy sessions, and activities designed to help couples reconnect and strengthen their relationships. The first day was tough. We had to confront a lot of our issues head on, and there were moments when I felt like walking out. But as the days went on, I started to see the benefits. The structured environment helped us open up in ways we hadn't been able to before. One evening during a group session, the facilitator asked us to share something we appreciated about our partner. Emily went first. I appreciate Derek's strength, she said, her voice wavering slightly. Even when things got tough, he stayed and fought for us. He didn't have to, but he did. And I'm so grateful for that. Her words hit me hard and I felt a lump form in my throat. It was my turn and I took a deep breath. I appreciate Emily's willingness to change, I said. She's made a lot of sacrifices and put in a lot of effort to make things right. It hasn't been easy, but she has done it, and it means the world to me. After the session, we took a walk around the resort. The air was crisp and the stars were bright overhead. Emily slipped her hand into mine and I squeezed it gently. Thank you for coming here with me, she said softly. Thank you for suggesting it, I replied. I think it's really helping. We walked in silence for a while, just enjoying each other as company. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace and hope for the future. Back home, things continued to improve. We kept up with our therapy sessions and made a conscious effort to spend quality time together. There were still moments of doubt and hurt, but they were becoming less frequent. One evening, as we were cooking dinner together, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. Derek, there's something I need to tell you. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? I have been thinking a lot about everything that happened, she said, and I realized that I haven't been completely honest with you. A sense of dread washed over me. What do you mean? She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. When I said I ended things with Mark, I wasn't entirely truthful. We talked a few more times after I told you it was over. It wasn't anything physical, just phone calls and texts. But I should have told you. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal, but I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Why didn't you tell me? I was afraid, she admitted. I was afraid of losing you for good. But I realize now that keeping secrets isn't the way to rebuild trust. I'm so sorry, Derek. I stood there, trying to process her words. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her that this was the final straw. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, knew that we had come too far to give up now. Thank you for telling me, I finally said. It hurts, but I appreciate your honesty. We can move forward with secrets between us. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I promise, no more secrets. From now on, complete honesty. It was another setback, but it also felt like a breakthrough. We talked for hours that night, laying everything out on the table. It was painful, but it was also cathartic. By the time we went to bed, I felt a strange sense of relief. Over the next few months, we continued to work on our relationship. There were still moments of doubt and pain, but they were becoming fewer and farther between. We were learning to trust each other again, slowly but surely. One day, as we were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a hopeful smile. Do you think we're going to be okay? I took her hand in mine, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Yeah, I think we are. It's going to take time, but I believe we can get through this. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace and hope for the future. As Emily and I continued our journey towards healing, things slowly began to stabilize. The raw pain of the betrayal started to dull, and in its place, a cautious optimism began to grow. We still had our rough days, but they were becoming less frequent. We were learning to communicate better, to really listen to each other. One evening, a few months after Emily's confession about the continued contact with Mark, we decided to host a small dinner party for some close friends. It was the first time we had people over since everything happened, and I was nervous. But I also felt like it was an important step for us to show that we were moving forward. The night went surprisingly well. Our friends were supportive, and it felt good to laugh and relax in the company of people we cared about. At one point, Emily caught my eye from across the room and smiled. It was a genuine, heartfelt smile, and it made me realize how far we'd come. Later that night, after everyone had left, we were cleaning up in the kitchen. Emily turned to me, her eyes shining. "Tonight was really nice," she said softly. "Thank you for agreeing to do this." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Yeah, it was. I'm glad we did it." She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around me. "I know we still have a lot of work to do, but I really feel like we're on the right track. I love you, Derek." "I love you too," I replied, hugging her tightly. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. As the weeks went by, we continued to rebuild our relationship. We made an effort to spend more quality time together to really connect. One weekend, we decided to take a spontaneous road trip to the coast. It was something we used to do all the time before everything fell apart, and it felt good to recapture a bit of that old spontaneity. We spent the weekend exploring small coastal towns, walking along the beach, and just enjoying each other's company. One evening, as we watched the sunset over the ocean, Emily took my hand and squeezed it. "Thank you for this," she said. "I've missed us." "Me too," I replied, feeling a swell of emotion. "I'm glad we were doing this." Back home, things continued to improve. We had our ups and downs, but we were learning to navigate them together. One day, Emily came home with a brochure for a cooking class. "I thought this might be fun," she said, her eyes hopeful. "It could be a new thing for us to do together." I hesitated for a moment, but then I saw the sincerity in her eyes. "Yeah, let us do it. It sounds like fun." The cooking class turned out to be a great idea. It was something new for both of us, and it gave us a chance to work together and learn something new. We laughed a lot, made a few culinary disasters, and grew closer in the process. One evening, after a particularly successful class where we made a delicious risotto, we were sitting on the couch enjoying a glass of wine. "I feel like we were really getting somewhere," Emily said, her voice filled with hope. "I know it's not perfect, but it feels good." I nodded, feeling the same sense of cautious optimism. "Yeah, it does. I think we are doing really well." We continued our routine of therapy, quality time, and honest communication. There were still moments of doubt, but they were becoming fewer and farther between. We were learning to trust each other again, to rebuild what had been broken. One night, as we were lying in bed, Emily turned to me, her expression serious. "Derek, I know I've asked you this before, but do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I looked at her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Emily, I've been thinking a lot about this. Forgiveness is a process, and I can't say I am completely there yet. But I can say that I want to get there. I want to forgive you because I love you, and I want us to have a future together." Tears filled her eyes, and she nodded. "Thank you. That means more to me than you will ever know." We lay there in silence for a while, holding each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was ours. A few weeks later, we had a major breakthrough in therapy. Dr. Avery had us do an exercise where we wrote letters to each other, expressing our feelings and hopes for the future. It was emotional and cathartic, and it helped us articulate things we hadn't been able to say out loud. In my letter, I wrote about my hopes for our future, my desire to fully forgive her, and my commitment to rebuilding our marriage. Emily's letter was filled with remorse, love, and a promise to never take me for granted again. Reading those letters, I felt a sense of closure and a renewed sense of hope. We weren't out of the woods yet, but we were on the right path. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a hopeful smile. "Do you think we are going to be okay?" she asked. I took her hand in mine, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Yeah, I think we are. It's going to take time, but I believe we can get through this." She leaned her head on my shoulder, And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace and hope for the future. As time went on, Emily and I continued to work on our relationship. The trust we were rebuilding felt fragile, but it was growing stronger every day. We still had our rough patches, but we were learning to navigate them together. One of the biggest challenges was finding new ways to connect and build positive experiences. One evening, after a particularly productive therapy session, Emily surprised me with an idea. "Derek, I've been thinking," she began hesitantly. "What if we started volunteering together? It might be a good way for us to bond and give back to the community at the same time." I was taken aback but intrigued. "Volunteering? That's an interesting idea. What kind of volunteering did you have in mind?" "There's a local shelter that always needs help," she said. "I thought we could start there, see how it goes." The idea of working together towards a common goal, especially one that involved helping others, felt like a positive step forward. "Yeah, let ES do it. I think it could be really good for us." We signed up to volunteer at a local homeless shelter, committing to spend a few hours each weekend helping out. The first time we went, I wasn't sure what to expect. But as we worked side by side, serving meals and talking with the people there, I felt a sense of connection and purpose that had been missing. Emily seemed to thrive in this new environment. She was compassionate and empathetic, qualities that had drawn me to her in the first place. Seeing her interact with the shelter's guests, I was reminded of why I had fallen in love with her. One Saturday, after a particularly busy shift at the shelter, we went for a walk in the park. The crisp autumn air was refreshing, and the vibrant colors of the leaves made everything feel alive. "Volunteering has been really good for us," Emily said, her hand tucked into mine. "I feel like we are getting closer every day." "I feel the same way," I replied. "It's nice to have something positive to focus on, something that's bigger than just us." We continued to volunteer regularly, and it became a cornerstone of our healing process. It wasn't just about rebuilding our relationship anymore. It was about finding new ways to grow together and contribute to the world around us. As the months passed, the holidays approached. We decided to host Thanksgiving at our house, inviting both our families. It was a big step, and I was nervous about how it would go. But I also felt a sense of excitement and hope. Thanksgiving turned out to be a wonderful day. Our families were supportive, and it felt good to be surrounded by loved ones. Emily and I worked together seamlessly, preparing the meal and making sure everyone felt welcome. There were moments of laughter and even a few tears of joy. After everyone had left and we were cleaning up, Emily turned to me, her eyes shining with happiness. "Today was perfect," she said. "Thank you for making it so special." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. It was a team effort. I couldn't have done it without you. That night, as we sat on the couch, cuddled up under a blanket, I felt a deep sense of contentment. We had come a long way, and while there was still work to be done, I truly believed we were on the right path. One evening, as we were wrapping up another successful volunteer shift, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Derek, I've been thinking a lot about our future," she said. "I know we've talked about kids before, but I wanted to revisit that conversation. What do you think?" The question took me by surprise. We had put the idea of having children on hold while we worked through our issues, but now it felt like the right time to discuss it again. I think it is something we should seriously consider," I replied. "We've come a long way, and I believe we are in a much better place now." Emily smiled, a mixture of relief and excitement in her eyes. "I feel the same way. I think we could make wonderful parents, and it's something I really want for us." We decided to take it slow, not rushing into anything, but the possibility of starting a family added a new layer of hope and excitement to our lives. As we continued to navigate our journey, there were still challenges. There were moments of doubt, and times when old wounds were reopened. But through it all, we kept communicating, kept working, and kept choosing each other. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a smile. "Do you remember when we used to do this all the time?" she asked. I nodded, feeling a sense of nostalgia. "Yeah, it feels good to get back to it." "We've come a long way," she said softly. and I am so grateful for every step we've taken together." I took her hand in mine, feeling a deep sense of love and commitment. "Me too, Emily, me too." As we sat there, watching the colors of the sky change, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. Our journey was far from over, but we were moving forward one step at a time, and that was enough. Things had been going well for Emily and me. We had established a new normal, filled with volunteering, therapy, and rekindling our connection. We were even discussing starting a family. It felt like we were truly moving forward. But life, as always, had a way of throwing unexpected challenges our way. One morning, Emily woke up feeling unusually tired and nauseous. At first, we thought it was just a bug, but the symptoms persisted. After a week, I suggested she take a pregnancy test just to rule it out. Emily was hesitant, but eventually agreed. We sat in the bathroom, waiting for the result. When the test showed positive, we were both shocked and overjoyed. The idea of having a child had always been part of our plans, but it felt surreal now that it was actually happening. "We're going to be parents," I said, my voice filled with wonder. Emily's eyes were filled with tears of happiness. "I can't believe it. This is amazing." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of doctoress appointments, planning and sharing the news with our families. Everyone was thrilled for us, and it felt like everything was finally falling into place. But then, about 2 months into the pregnancy, Emily started experiencing complications. She had severe cramps and bleeding, and we rushed to the emergency room. The doctors were concerned and kept her overnight for observation. Sitting in that sterile hospital room, I felt a wave of fear and helplessness wash over me. I held Emily's hand, trying to be strong for her, but inside I was terrified. The next morning, the doctor came in with a serious expression. "I'm afraid I have some difficult news. Emily is experiencing a threatened miscarriage. We'll do everything we can, but there's a chance she might lose the baby." Emily squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice shaking. The doctor explained that Emily needed to be on strict bed rest and avoid any stress or physical activity. It was a daunting prospect, but we were determined to do whatever it took. For the next few weeks, I took time off work to be with Emily and help her through this difficult time. It was hard seeing her so scared and vulnerable, but it also brought us closer together. We leaned on each other, finding strength in our shared love and determination. Despite our best efforts, the complications persisted. Emily's health was deteriorating, and the doctors became increasingly concerned. After a particularly bad night, we had to make a heartbreaking decision. The doctor sat us down and explained the situation. Emily's health is at serious risk. Continuing the pregnancy could be dangerous for both her and the baby. I know this is an incredibly difficult decision, but I recommend considering terminating the pregnancy to protect Emily's health. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Emily was sobbing, and I held her close, feeling utterly helpless. "Emily, I love you more than anything," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "Your health is the most important thing to me. We can try again in the future, but I can't lose you." She nodded, her tears soaking into my shirt. "I know. I wanted this so much." "I know," I whispered, my heart breaking for both of us. "But we have to make the right choice for your health." With heavy hearts, we made the painful decision to terminate the pregnancy. It was the hardest thing we'd ever had to do, and the grief was overwhelming. We leaned on each other, finding solace in our shared pain and love. The weeks that followed were a blur of sorrow and healing. We continued our therapy, and Dr. Avery helped us navigate the complex emotions we were experiencing. It wasn't easy, but we were determined to get through it together. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Emily turned to me with a sad but determined look in her eyes. "I am so sorry, Derek," she said, her voice trembling. "I feel like I've let you down." I took her hand, my heart aching for her. "You haven't let me down, Emily. This isn't your fault. We've been through so much, and we'll get through this too. I love you, and I'm here for you no matter what." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, and I believe we'll get through this." The road to healing was long and difficult, but we faced it together. We continued our volunteering, finding comfort in helping others even as we navigated our own pain. We leaned on our friends and family, and they supported us through every step. Through it all, our bond grew stronger. We learned to communicate better, to support each other, and to find joy in the small moments. It wasn't easy, but we were committed to our journey together. One day, as we were walking through the park, Emily turned to me with a hopeful smile. "Do you think we'll try again someday?" she asked. I squeezed her hand, feeling a renewed sense of hope. "Yes, I do. When the time is right, we'll try again, and no matter what, we'll face it together." She smiled, her eyes filled with love and determination. Together. As we walked hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace and hope for the future. Our journey had been filled with unexpected challenges, but we were stronger for it, and I knew that no matter what came our way, we would face it together. After the loss of our baby, Emily and I found ourselves in a new phase of healing. The grief was heavy, but it also brought us closer together. We continued our therapy, both individually and as a couple, and leaned on our support system of friends and family. It was a slow process, but we were determined to move forward. One day, during a particularly tough therapy session, Dr. Avery suggested an exercise to help rebuild our trust. "I want you both to write a list of 10 things you appreciate about each other," she said. "It can be anything big or small. The goal is to focus on the positives and remind yourselves of why you fell in love in the first place." We both agreed, though I was a bit skeptical. It seemed like a simple exercise, but as I sat down to write my list, I realized how powerful it could be. That evening, Emily and I sat at the kitchen table, our lists in hand. We took turns reading them out loud, and it turned into a beautiful, emotional moment. Emily started. "Derek, I appreciate your strength. You've been my rock through everything, and I don't know how I would have made it without you." I felt a lump in my throat as I listened to her words. "Emily, I appreciate your kindness. You have this incredible ability to make everyone around you feel loved and cared for." We continued, sharing our lists and opening up to each other in a way we hadn't in a long time. By the end of the exercise, we were both in tears, but they were tears of gratitude and love. The following weeks were filled with small steps toward rebuilding our trust. We started a nightly ritual of checking in with each other, sharing our thoughts, fears, and hopes for the future. It helped us stay connected and transparent. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Derek, I've been thinking about something Dr. Avery said in one of our sessions. She talked about the importance of forgiveness not just for each other, but for ourselves." I nodded, understanding what she meant. "Yeah, I've been thinking about that too. It's not easy, but I think it is crucial for moving forward." Emily took a deep breath. "I want you to know that I am working on forgiving myself for what happened. I made a terrible mistake, but I am committed to being a better partner and rebuilding our trust." Her honesty and vulnerability touched me deeply. "I'm working on forgiving you too, Emily, and I'm also working on forgiving myself for any ways I might have contributed to the distance between us. We are in this together." The road to rebuilding trust was not without its bumps. There were moments of doubt and fear, but we faced them together, head on. We continued our volunteering at the shelter, finding solace in helping others and in each other's company. One day, as we were volunteering, we met a young couple who had recently lost their home. They were struggling, but their love and support for each other were evident. Their resilience inspired us, and it made us realize how far we'd come in our own journey. After our shift, we sat in the park, reflecting on the couple we'd met. "It's amazing how they were sticking together despite everything," Emily said. "It reminds me of us." "Yeah, it does," I agreed. "It's a reminder that we can get through anything as long as we have each other." Emily smiled, taking my hand. "I love you, Derek. Thank you for not giving up on us." "I love you too, Emily, and I'm so glad we are finding our way back to each other." As the months passed, we continued to grow stronger. We made a conscious effort to prioritize our relationship, setting aside time for date nights, weekend getaways, and just being present with each other. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. One evening, As we were sitting by the fire, Emily turned to me with a smile. I have something for you. I raised an eyebrow, curious. Oh? What is it? She handed me a small, wrapped box. Open it. Inside was a beautiful watch, engraved with the words, "Forever yours." I wanted to give you something to symbolize our commitment to each other, she said. No matter what happens, I want you to know that I am here for you, forever. I was deeply touched. Thank you, Emily. This means more to me than you will ever know. We hugged, and I felt a deep sense of love and gratitude. We had come a long way, and while there were still challenges ahead, I knew we could face them together. As the seasons changed and the year drew to a close, Emily and I found ourselves in a much better place. We had rebuilt our trust, strengthened our connection, and found new ways to grow together. The future felt bright and full of possibilities. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a hopeful smile. Derek, do you think we're ready to start thinking about the future again? About trying for a family? I took her hand, feeling a surge of hope and love. Yes, I do. I think we are ready, and no matter what happens, we'll face it together. She smiled, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. Together. As we watched the sunset, I felt a sense of peace and hope for the future. Our journey had been filled with challenges, but we had faced them together and come out stronger. I knew that no matter what the future held, we were ready to embrace it, hand in hand.